So a man can be hung, but he can't get hung. I mean, not without surgery. Anyway, we're talking about language here. I'm Andrew. Hi, your aspiring neighborhood bookseller. I'm a writer and editor as well, and so I have a lot of opinions about the English language. Mostly that I think it's awesome. I think it's really cool. I think it's there's no central authority in English. There's a king's English, but that's just the English that the king speaks, and I think monarchs are a total embarrassment. I hate to sound too American here, but I mean, you should be ashamed that you're a subject and not a citizen, basically. And you're not technically, so I get it. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about words, how they change. I generally think it's a good thing. I think, I'm not a rule follower. You have to convince me the rule makes sense. But the flip side of that is if the rule makes sense, my brain says, well, we should follow it. It's just here to make things easier. The rules of the road are there to help the flow of traffic go as efficiently and safely as possible. If everybody follows the rules, the traffic actually moves. You know what I'm saying? But do rules ever work like that? It's pretty tough. So English is cool that you can kind of do whatever you want. And I think that's what makes it so malleable. That's what makes it the Borg of languages. It will assimilate your language. It will find its way into your language somehow, no matter how much you modulate your shield frequencies. It's just going to get in there. And I think that's why it's so dominant. And so I can't stand in the way of changes, but that one I started with and another here, they really bug me because they just sound weird, and I think the distinctions were there for a reason. So that is why pictures get hung. Pictures get hung, right? Got too distracted trying to circle my picture. Pictures get hung, and people get hanged. The distinction there being, well, you're not mounting a person on a wall, you're not putting them up on a hook to dry, you are executing them. So it kind of makes sense to me that there's like this distinct word for that. But on the other hand, I don't think anyone is getting confused. Like if you said they took that bandit out and they strung him up from a tree and they hung him, you wouldn't think that they added some length to his appendage. You know what I mean? So as much as I don't like the way it sounds, I think I have to get over the hanged rather versus hung distinction. I think it's pretty much going to be hung from now on. And honestly, it's pretty efficient to have one word for the past tense of a word. You know, why English has a big problem with like lots of versions of a word, even though they're the same tense. So another example, and this is slightly different, is people saying that when they mean who. Like you use that for objects and you use who for people. So the example would be, that is the doctor who delivered the baby. A lot of people would just say, that's the doctor that delivered the baby. And that makes sense. It's not wrong. It just kind of is clumsy. I think a lot of the times when we cling to old rules, it is because they provide a certain level of elegance to the language, right? Having that distinction between hung and hanged is just sort of nice. It's sort of elegant. It gives you another option, right? And it also allows us to use the slang term hung. So you can say that man was hung, and you'll be like, you hooked up with a dead guy? You know what I mean? Like that's not, no confusion there. Again, is there going to be a lot of confusion about that? No. And I think that's why the language is abandoning hanged. The who distinction, I think, is a little different. I still think you're going to need it. And I do think it's really clumsy to say that's the guy that did that. Why wouldn't you just say that's the guy who did that? But it's a simplification process, I think. You know, we're just sort of finding the word that we like, and who knows, it might change again in the future. So here was my absurdly long rant about getting hanged and getting hung, and we'll never know who did that or something.